The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Bernardo knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis Stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis Stone. Every child Once upon a time, the infamous rover Renato plundered the floating isles. Then his mother called him to her deathbed. "Swear to me that you won't die on the gallows," she rasped. Reluctantly, he swore. And he whiled away his days at home with music, cards, and wine. But the Emperor had changed. He'd been good once, a shy, almost humble toad. He'd built universities. But then people started whispering about mass graves in the woods, midnight rituals, victims screaming. The Imperial Ravens would round up entire villages, and no one ever returned. The Ravens had come to Ubar scouting for ancient books said to be of great power. But the librarians had hidden the books, so they'd burnt the librarians. The citizens, outraged, had driven them off. The Ravens had come back with dropships. The kid had fled with one of those books. He was brave and dumb and wanted to join the rebellion. And Renato had promised his mother he'd protect him. The kid was looking down, watching his city burn. "Sorry, kid," Renato told the kid. "Look, if we give them the book, they'll leave you alone." "My mother died for this book!" "I promised her I'd protect you." Oh, damn it. The kid had run off. With the book, of course. So Renato had to run after him. The two Ravens were staring at the kid like he was their dinner, which probably was what was in their tiny brains. "Hey," Renato said. They cocked their heads at him. "Pick on someone as ugly as you." Wait, that didn't come out right. "For the Emperor!" The Ravens cawed and rushed at him. dropship flew overhead. He hoped they hadn't noticed him. The kid. Oh, right. The Gate of Heroes. Someone's idea of a joke, making the Skyship Docks a gated community. You needed a hero's sword to open it. And the kid was on the other side of the gate. Who let you through? Promise me you'll take the book to the rebels. Or I'm gonna steal your ship. I'm not taking that damn book anywhere. And neither are you. Try and stop me, laughed the kid. I bet you don't even have a hero's sword. And with that, the kid hopped away. Had to hand it to the kid. He was an idiot, but he had guts. Where was Reynardo going to get a hero sword? Ore and wind essence? That sounds about right. I'll need a workshop, though. Perfect. Hero Sword, QED. This is what he got for settling down and finding people to care about. The kid's mum had been a swell cook, and she'd laughed at Reynardo's jokes, even when he didn't know he'd made one. And then the ravens had come to burn her. And she'd made him promise to protect the kid. But she never told him where the book was. Just the kid. He came up to a ledge. It was too far to jump. There'd been a bridge here before, hadn't there? And there was Peter, giggling at him. How'd you get across? He asked the kid. Where'd you find a hook? I hopped, said the kid. Wise-ass kid. Hey, look out behind you! Cute, said Reynardo. Ah, oh, ravens. It was time to talk some sense into the kid. Just hook his way across the ledge and chase the kid down. Thing was, he hadn't used his hook since he'd retired. How had he done it? Maybe if he meditated at that altar there, he'd remember his old skills. Starting to come back to him. Something you never completely forgot, like how to freeze time when attacking. The more he fought, the more he'd probably remember. And there was the Farfarer. She was the fastest ship he'd ever known. She could do the Kestra run in 12 furlongs. Oh, so the salesman had told him. And something told him the kid was about to walk into an ambush. Stop! He shouted. I'm not giving you the book! Shouted the kid, and took off. No! Peter! The kid ran for it, and a goggler nailed him with its ivy. The book was unburned. Next to it were the buckles from the kid's shoes, and a kid-sized pile of ashes. Damn it, why hadn't he lied and told the kid he'd take the book to the rebels? The kid would be alive now. Really pissed off and betrayed, but alive. Oh, damn it. Reynardo picked up the book. He couldn't let the Empire have it now. He was going to have to get it out of there. He'd be a wanted man. Probably have to join the rebellion just to have a place to dock. Well, he'd hated home life anyway. Big deal about this book anyway. Maybe he should open it and find out. All that had been years ago. How many? The war was a blur, and now 3 Raven scout ships were chasing him. "Where are you running, rebel?" cawed the Raven captain over the loudhailer. Reynardo could see them cranking up their catapults. "Just going out for milk?" Reynardo yelled back. "Where can you run?" laughed the Raven horribly. Far behind him, another city was burning. The dark cloud above its island was thousands of Imperial ships. The fleet was doing a thorough job. "Take us to the rebel base! I will spare your life!" it called. The entire jury-rigged rebel fleet was only a few islands to the east. Beyond that were only the pillars of heaven. A sea of endless blood-colored tornadoes. The rebellion was out of time. Unless Reynardo could bring a game-changer. Maybe he could. Reynardo had found out where he could find the pieces of the Sky Ripper, the legendary weapon that had exiled the lost gods. Surely a legendary weapon could win the final battle. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino had sent Reynardo a desperate message saying he had a brilliant scheme to save the rebellion. If Reynardo could only rescue him. Reynardo dived the Farfarer towards the abyss. As he felt the heat of the jet stream, the Raven ships peeled off, not stable enough to follow him down there. Now it was time to choose. Lapino or the Sky Ripper. Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. The Ravens had figured out that Lapino was a rebel spy. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? You couldn't find high-quality ore like this just anywhere. Just anywhere with chests. A very clever engineer named Elon Muskratter got his start making floating platforms. Not many people knew that. The Ravens had taken the town. Reynardo had seen villages emptied like this. All the people taken away to be sacrificed in the Emperor's secret rituals. Reynardo hoped the people were just hiding. Reynardo's blood was up. He just needed to smash something.
Can't we just agree to disagree? Said Reynardo. No?
Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino. Where had the mad rabbit got to?
Reynardo felt like he was ready to learn new things. Thank goodness he didn't have to go to school for that.
It was starting to come back to him. Something you never completely forgot. Like how to freeze time when attacking. The more he fought, the more he'd probably remember.
Come over here.
Wondered if he could learn to cook this way. Probably not.
This is why heroes are called dashing, Reynardo thought. See? Dashing? Get it?
Dirty and bloody, Reynardo finally reached Lupino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Reynardo recognized the cards. It was Lupino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, we see this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. Zenobia wasn't just the Emperor's daughter, of course. She'd been Reynardo's best friend in Sword Fu School. And you're still mad for her, the rabbit reminded him. They'd been close. She'd told him things no one else knew. But she'd never told him who she really was. She knows all the Emperor's plans, chuckled the master spy. She won't give them up easily. She'll tell the interrogators, all right, said Lupino. Taking her would change the game, all right. The city was already under Zenobia's control. I had to admire her efficiency. Reynardo shivered at the thought of Zenobia at the mercy of the interrogators. Could he really turn her over to them? But this was war. It wasn't meant to be pretty. Reynardo wondered who was leaving chests of sword-crafting supplies around. He wanted to thank him. Gogglers. Reynardo hated gogglers. It was almost impossible to sneak past them. If one didn't spot you, another one would. Huh? A lever? That was new. Most people still use doorknobs. So, what's this plan of yours? Use me as bait, said Lupino. And he outlined a slightly complicated plan that involved geese, a net, setting the Farfarer a little bit on fire, Lupino dressing as an old blind toad, and Reynardo hiding inside a monstrous watermelon. What could possibly go wrong? Thought Reynardo. Oh, go ahead. I'm sure you know better, said Lupino.
A crafting bench. Reynardo wondered what he could make with it.
He wasn't that good. Yet. Renato slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up on her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek. How soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She became smoke. And he noticed he had a blade to his throat. "Stay a while," purred a familiar voice. "Did you really think you could capture me?" Zenobia said as her ship lifted off. "Now I just wanted some privacy," Renato said. "Did you ever wonder why the Emperor adopted you?" And he told her why. His Imperial Majesty wanted to bring the lost gods back. They could make him immortal. But to seal the bargain, he needed a sacrifice. Someone who truly loved him. "You're lying." She was furious. "You can't prove that." "I can." And so they set sail for the Nexus. The scientists at the observatory have resurrected one of his victims. Well, he's not exactly alive, but it can talk, and it can't lie. You took a big risk. You know, I could just cast a spell to make you tell me where the rebel base is, and you wouldn't consider that cheating? She frowned. Ugh, fine. Let's go get your witness. The rebellion had started after atrocities that the Empire hushed up. Renato had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred for one book. He had slept in a burnt village. Dead kittens and puppies had come to tell him what the Emperor had done to them. Who needed bridges anyway? Mother wasn't watching. Remembering all his old tricks, and some new ones. Now, he really ought to ask for a raise. She caught up with him. She seemed troubled. "All right, out with it," he said. He sent his ravens to search for an ancient crystal. Something called the Iblis Stone. Iblis? Isn't he one of the lost gods? He shivered. A stone dedicated to one of the lost gods. Well, that could give great power. But what would the god demand in return?
I'm a firefox, thought Renato.
The scientists on this island had been investigating the Emperor's dark rituals on their own. They were neutral in the civil war engulfing the Empire, but they could see that the dark magics the old Toad had loosed were changing the world. Renato hoped he and Zenobia weren't putting them in danger.
These platforms were great. Renato wanted one for his house.
You know what I hate about you guys? Everything.
Ooh, Renato hated warlocks. The way they stayed back and lobbed pain and death from a distance. Cowards. Really dangerous, effective cowards.
Ooh, sparkly, thought Renato. The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists and black feathers everywhere. The Ravens had taken care to burn the reanimated witness to cinders. Zenobia stared around, shocked. The scientists had been neutral. They had no part in the rebellion. "Take me to your council," she said, shaken. "I have things to tell them." It was what Renato had gambled on. The Zenobia would turn against her father once she knew his madness. But the rebel base was secret. Could he really risk taking the Emperor's daughter there? Renato reached Lapino by Farspeaker Toad, the one creature the Ravens had left alive at the observatory. "I'll meet up with you at the base," Lapino said through the Toad. "Good thinking." Renato gave him the coordinates. "There's a shuttle here I can, borrow." Renato found Zenobia in the chart room. "I've been having awful dreams," she said. "Dead kittens and, worse. I thought they were only dreams, you know. Why would anyone want the lost gods back? In those days, the favorite of a god could become immortal." She held herself and shivered. "He wants to become an eater of souls." "Well, I'm not afraid of dying. Just dying of boredom," Renato said, but she didn't laugh. Silence fell as they flew towards the ruins of the city of Ubar, where the rebellion leadership was hiding. If Zenobia couldn't help them fight off her father, No one could. As they touched the ground, he could smell the ravens and hear their hungry caws in the distance. "They're probably looking for me," she said. "You go on ahead." She had that fiery look in her eyes that he'd always loved. It was a bit odd, though. How easy she'd been to convince. It was what he'd gambled on, but he'd expected more of an argument. She'd always loved to argue. She considered it the fastest way to the truth. Maybe she'd long suspected the truth. Sometimes all it took was taking the bandages from your eyes. That must be it, he told himself. Sharp? Check. Pointy? Check. Flexible? Check. What else do you need in a sword? Mustache, thought Renato. Practice your moves, thought Renato. Keeps you limber. They caught their breath under a ruined arch. "It's beautiful," she said. "This was the library of Ubar," he said. "Your father's ravens thought they had an ancient book." She nodded. Was she crying? This was exactly what I wanted, Renato thought. To turn her to our cause. So, why do I feel something is terribly wrong? Because nothing ever goes this smoothly, is why.
"Say goodnight, Gracie," said Renato, wondering who Gracie was.
I'll just have a dash, thought Reynardo. Council toads swarmed around Zenobia, shocked she was there, shocked she had changed sides. Then, the walls exploded. He heard toads croaking, "Oh, the ravens!" Blackbirds were pouring through holes everywhere. "It's a trap!" cried the council speaker. In the confusion, he saw flashes of magic. Then Zenobia being hustled off by Imperial troops. So, she had betrayed him after all. Reynardo ran for his ship. The Farfarer flew into the clouds, barely losing the Imperial ravens pursuing him. The rebellion was lost, and he had lost it. There was nothing to do but find Zenobia and make her pay for her treachery. His heart ached. He still loved her. But he had trusted her, and he had been a fool. She would be back at the fleet, gloating with her mad, bloodthirsty father. For all Reynardo knew, she was helping him bring back the old, lost gods back from their exile. Reynardo landed in the middle of the Imperial fleet. The rebels were losing badly. Without leadership, it was a slaughter. Reynardo felt strangely free, trying not to think about how he had lost the war. Trying not to think about how he had loved Zenobia, blinded himself to her treachery. That's what it meant to be a hero. To keep on fighting after the most bitter of betrayals. To never know if you could trust anyone. Cats. What a waste of fur. Missed his old skills. He welcomed them back like he was at a reunion. What's for dinner, he thought. I hope it's not broccoli.
Renardo wondered what would happen if he jumped. Would he be rescued by an emergency platform? Renardo felt a little better. Don't look down, he thought. My God, it's full of stars.
Taylor was going to charge for all the holes in his clothes.
What had happened to Lupino? Had the Mad Rabbit fled to safety? Or was he forlornly carrying on with the few rebels Renardo could see here or there? It didn't matter anymore. All there was slash and spin, parry and lunge, over and over as he fought his way across the fleet. All there was finding the girl he'd once loved, who had used his love against him and putting as big a hole in her heart as she'd left in his. Think of all the artisans he was creating employment for. Truly, he was a job creator. suddenly Zenobia was there, advancing on Lapino. So the Mad Rabbit had survived. "Save me, or I'm done for!" screamed Lapino. Zenobia turned, showing her teeth in a smile. "You're alive!" Renato ran towards the witch. "Lapino's the one who betrayed you!" she shouted. "He warned my father!" Renato sank his sword into the witch before she could fool him again. She stared at him, heartbroken. "No! Lapino's the traitor!" Then he felt a knife in his back. "I'm afraid she's right," said the Mad Rabbit. "Ain't I a stinker?" Then the sun went out. Okay, that was weird. He could have sworn he'd just died. Instead, he was on the Farfarer, sailing away from Ubar. And it was still burning. He'd fled burning Ubar years ago, hadn't he? And now he was back there. Had all those years fighting the Empire been nothing but a vision into the future? A useful vision if it was true. He'd learned something. Lapino was a traitor. Renato had suspected there was something wrong with the Mad Rabbit. But now he knew there was malice behind his goofiness. He'd made bad choices. But now, when the real battle came, he wouldn't make those choices. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The book's pages began to flip backwards, towards the beginning. And he realized that his adventure was just beginning. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Renato. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis stone. It sounded ominous. It sounded powerful. If the Emperor was searching for it, it must be dangerous. And so, Renato went ostrich hunting. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis stone? Long hidden in a buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? I wonder what I could make with all these sword crafting materials, thought Renato.
air here tasted bitter. The steps were too tall for a person. The entire place felt restless, like it had been vexed to nightmare under the dust, waiting for its hour to come around at last. Ravens were already here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. And he hadn't come too late. Haven't you always wanted to do that?
Can I borrow that?
He was practically sure he'd find something useful in one of these things. Wait, what? How was he outside? Hadn't he taken an elevator into the depths of the Earth?
Shield?
handle any better dead, Renato thought.
Trusty old sword was always a little better when he sharpened it. In your next life.
The Ravens at least could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders. Renato wondered if it wasn't cheaper to build bridges and stairs. It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. I can make you mighty. Who said that? Give blood. It was the stone. Eager, thirsty. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and Renato wasn't sure he really wanted to be Emperor. Why not capture the core of Skyripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. "What's the core?" said the stone anxiously. The stone bothered him. He hated being told what to do. Wasn't that why he joined the rebellion? Wasn't that why he'd refused to be a soldier? He'd agreed to come on board only if he could freelance. The stone felt a bit clingy. The sage Calaveras had told him where to find the Skyripper, a weapon capable of challenging the gods. Even without its armature, the core would still possess great power. He would go there. The moment he landed the Farfarer, Renato had a rare feeling of regret. It's not too late, he thought. He could turn around and sail for Zenobia's island. He frowned. Wait a minute. He didn't want to kill Zenobia, did he? Sure, technically she was the enemy, but they'd been at Sword Fu school together. They'd never been lovers, but somehow they'd been closer. She'd told him every secret about herself, except the biggest one, that she was the Emperor's daughter. No, kill Sylvia, whispered the stone, before it's too late. Hoped his hook didn't break.
Ooh, Renato loved to improve his gear.
There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. Where did that go to? The stone hadn't lied about what it could do for him. With each raven he cut down, he felt a jolt of power flowing into his arm. "You're weak," whispered the stone. "The core will kill you." "Are you afraid of it?" "No, don't be ridiculous," it chuckled. But it's unstable. It will poison you so much as carry it, and if you try to use it, it will explode catastrophically. Renato did not trust rocks that talked in his head. He went onwards. Big eyes you have. As he approached the core, the stone became hysterical. No, it's too much power. We'll rip a hole in space and time. He had a sudden vision of plunging his gauntlet into the core and dying in anguish. That wasn't his vision, was it? The stone had sent him its darkest fears, hadn't it? He had a sudden impulse to do exactly that. He raised his right fist and plunged it into the core. There was a rush of light. He thought he could hear the stone screaming. And then he passed out. When Renato came to, the core was gone. But the Iblis stone was no longer black, but glowing with a blue light. And it was silent. "I can't hear you," he sang out, and "Yoo-hoo!" It didn't answer. "Ha!" he said. He had defeated the demonic gem with the power of his mind. He felt invincible. It was time to attack the Imperial outpost on the Nexus. Take the battle to the enemy. But among the huge crystals, there was also an observatory. A wise man would probably ask the scientists exactly what he had first. How wise was he? As the Farfarer made its way toward the Nexus, Renato could see tiny sparks in the blackness that was the Iblis Stone, as if somewhere within it, the core was still spitting out energy, which the Iblis Stone sucked in hungrily. You'd think the stone would want this kind of power, wouldn't it? Thought Renato. Well, the scientists would explain it all. See? He'd trusted his gut, and it had worked out. That's what it meant to be a hero. To ignore the naysayers and the oddmakers, and do what you knew was right, and have it turn out to be the right thing. Well, he wasn't worried. Once he got to the observatory, the scientist Toads could explain it. Then he could carry the war into the enemy's camp and destroy them all. Oh dear, he was getting a little bloodthirsty, wasn't he? Well, he'd always wanted to do that. It was time to make a new sword. Renato wondered if his future self had commissioned these poles. Renato had never felt better in his life. Normally, a battle would wear him down and he would need a night's sleep. Now he felt like he could go all night and all day. He felt like people were cheering him on, and he could practically hear their applause as he slew one raven after another. The Iblis Stone and the Sky River Core.
2 artifacts from the time of legends. Reynardo was becoming a legendary hero, wasn't he? He had enough power to save the rebellion, but he had to understand this power, so he would not misuse it. This thing really needed a roof. You think at this rate, or some people are just liable to explode if you upset them. Burns fur. His. Reynardo had been the terror of the sandcastles when he was 2. The toads at the observatory measured the stone with their occult devices. I fed it the core of Skyripper, explained Reynardo. No more feed me blood and souls.
But the core is not an unlimited energy source,
said one toad. Another said,
there's a feedback loop, you see, which could overload the stone.
Yeah, the stone doesn't actually feed on souls,
claimed a third.
But on pain of killing another sentient being. If you can truly be at peace with yourself, it would not overload.
This was all very confusing. At peace? Yes, the mountains were peaceful and quiet, but he now had the power to turn the tides. He should report to the Rebellion Council and prepare for the decisive battle. Reynardo couldn't make sense of anything the toads said, and listening to them argue made him restless. The Iblis Stone had made him a power in his own right. The core had kicked the Iblis Stone out of his head by filling it with more power than it could eat. It was time to meet the leadership of the rebellion. It was time to go to the ruins where they had hidden their secret base. He was ready for anything the Ravens could throw at him. His sword felt ready too. It seemed to know what he wanted most. Well, they really needed to redecorate anyway.
told Zenobia, Hypatia, the kid's mother. Renato had never thought he'd date a librarian. He'd always figured himself for the barmaid type. But then, he'd never figured the library of Ubar would have comic books, or that Hypatia would know anything about them. He missed her.
Go away.
The Iblastone wasn't pestering him anymore. Good. He didn't want to chit-chat, not with anybody. He didn't want to think about Zenobia or Lapino. He just wanted to fight.
Whee!
Good thing Renato didn't have vertigo.
Magical jewel. Renato couldn't wait to find a workbench. This was almost fun. Pain of killing another sentient being? What was that toad talking about anyway? He felt no pain, only pleasure as each filthy raven fell by his sword and the stone glowed brighter and brighter. All the while, those voices were cheering him on like he was in the arena, winning bout after bout. never felt ready to take on new powers.
If I craft a sword now, it's going to be really short. Hey, how do you tell if someone's far away, but it's really small? Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. Feels so close to you. Reynardo checked for a false compartment. Nope. He slew and slew across the ruins and into the labyrinth that hid the secret rebel base. He was surprised not to see any defenders or even any of the council toads. When he reached the council chambers, there were still no toads, only filthy ravens. "Stop him! He's gone mad!" one raven shouted until he had hacked them all down. There was not a single toad anywhere. No doubt they'd all been taken prisoner, so it was up to him to take revenge upon the Imperial fleet. But where had they taken the council? It couldn't be good that the Empire had not only found the secret rebel base, but killed or captured everyone there. No matter. He was on a roll. He headed full speed towards the Imperial fleet. He would be the fox who took down 100 warships. He charged. The Imperial fleet was huge and deadly. But he was deadlier. The crowd was cheering him on. He could practically hear it. Reynardo, the hero of the rebellion.
Every day he was getting better and better.
There was an inscription, no spitting.
I think this is yours, said Reynardo, but he couldn't hear his enemy's answer. It was definitely easier to fight inanimate objects. Reynardo felt new powers ready to blossom within him. As he slew his way across the fleet, Reynardo thought he could hear a small voice whispering in his ear. "Look at your gauntlet, you idiot," he said. "Oh, for heaven's sake," he thought. "Can't I be alone in my own head? Look at the stone." "I'm busy," he told the voice. "Talk later." "Then it will be too late," cried the voice. "Don't be so bloody thick. Piss off," he told the voice and kept up his slaying. He'd once met a pirate captain. He used hooks to get around his ship. Oh, what was his name again?
Soon he'd confront the Emperor. Funny that this whole war had come about because the Emperor feared death. And now it was coming for him. There was some sort of lesson there, wasn't there? There was the Emperor. Renato cut down his elite guard. The exalted Toad cowered fearfully. He had sought to evade death and only made death come to him faster. Renato savored the moment. And then, too quick, it was over. He stood over the dead Emperor.
Death to tyranny! He shouted. Go, House, go!
Zenobia stepped out of the shadows. You have to stop, she said. You've killed everyone. Our ravens, your rebels. You murdered the whole rebel council. What? Oh, the ravens killed the council. You big idiot. They don't even know what the secret base is. Shouted Lapino, who was with her for some reason. Look at the stone, said Zenobia. It was black as night. Blacker. But I fed it the core, said Renato. It was glowing. Well, who needs a core? He said, and he attacked. Zenobia conjured her best, and Lapino hopped around like a mad rabbit, but he killed them both easily.
I am unstoppable, he orated at the blood-soaked walls. I alone shall be Emperor.
The tiny voice inside him screamed, that doesn't even sound like you, you big fanny. The stone has stolen your mind. But he ignored it. Who listens to voices in their heads anyway? Madmen, that's who. Renato stared at the book. He was still alive. Again. And still only flying away from burning Ubar. Had he lived that adventure? Or only dreamt it? Had he really died? It felt so real, not like a dream at all. And he'd lost again. Oh, he hated that. But he had made different choices. And he'd lost in a different way. It was the book, wasn't it? Oracles showed you your destiny. But this was showing him different ways he could die miserably. Thanks a bunch, book, he thought. But these were destinies that he did not have to fulfill. But he'd learn another true thing. The Iblis Stone was evil. It would try to corrupt anyone who used it. But that meant there must be a destiny where he survived.